For my first ever Fishing Gurus chapter, I'm jumping in at the deep end. I've brought you to a venue that is a serious challenge. People blank on here for up to weeks at a time, but I'm sticking my neck out on the line. I've brought you to Marbury Mere. This style of fishing isn't for everyone. There's lots of obstacles you have to overcome. The walk to the peg is hard, you've got to set your box up out in the water, you've got to catch the fish, which are nightmares to catch, the wind's hacking in your face and it's raining. If you're wanting a comfy day, I'd suggest sticking to a commercial, but for me, the buzz that you get when you get this sort of fishing right, I don't get that in any other style of fishing. This is not your typical feeder fishing session. What we're doing today is specimen feeder fishing. It's one of the most difficult and challenging styles of feeder fishing I've ever done. And I can tell you that from a personal point of view. First 4 times I've visited this place, I blanked. Deciding where to fish on these big open waters is really important. So to plumb up, all I've done is I've chucked out at the start and I've dragged my bomb along the bottom till I've found a nice clear patch, which is actually 50 metres from where I'm fishing. Lovely clean bottom, the fish will settle down there and that's where I've pre-baited. Of course, a key factor is depth. It's so important that you're fishing in that right depth, and I'll expand on that a little bit. If it's really warm, the fish will come up into shallower water. Today, I've got a 2-second count on 1.5 ounce bomb. And I think that's around 8 to 10 foot, something like that, because it's a heavy bomb, and when it travels from the surface to the bottom, that's my indication on depth. But if the conditions are a bit colder, and it's later on in the year, say autumn and winter time, the fish generally hold in that deeper water. So if it's red hot, they'll come in shallow, but if it's cold, aim for the deeper water. That's a hard part out of the way, setting all this box up, but all my gear is ready to rock and roll. But before I actually start fishing, I'm going to put 10 large bait hook feeders in. That's really important at the start of your session because it's a big, massive, wild venue. I need to stack the odds in my favour of getting them fish to where I want to catch them. Making that bit of noise and activity will give me a really good chance. So I'm going to put 10 of these in with a few particles. I think that's a great way to kick off this session. That's the 10 feederfuls out there, and a nice little tip now is give your swim a little bit of time to settle down. Give it around 30 minutes, give them fish a little bit of confidence. The last thing you want to do is catch the first fish that comes into your peg. It's all about creating that competition. Get a lot of fish in your peg and they'll be a lot easier to catch. Bait wise, for these sort of venues, there's always that little bit of a mindset that you need tons and tons of bait with you to catch hundreds of fish. My side tray is really simple. I've got a tin of corn with me, a pint of soaked micro pellets, half a pint of dead maggots, a quarter kilo of worms and a pint of casters and 2 kilos of ground bait. Not tons on my side tray, I don't want to confuse myself. I'm going to use each individual bait throughout the day to hopefully get some impact and keep them fish coming. Ground bait choice for today's session is a fish meal base mix. This venue in particular sees loads of carp anglers and they feed lots of particles like pellets, boilies, so the fish are going to be used to that fish meal mix. I'm using Sweet Marine and Green Supreme mix 50-50. I've got a lot of confidence in this mix. It's got a really high fish meal content, loads of pellets in it, and the fish are going to absolutely love it. I've used the Green Supreme because I've got a lot of confidence in that green colour. I don't know why, the fish absolutely love it in natural waters. Green colour has worked really well for me over the years. In terms of how it's actually mixed, I always tend to err on the side of drier mixers because I've got a lot more freedom and flexibility when I'm on my peg. I can add a little bit of water to it and adapt as my session goes on. Using a platform when you're wading out into the water is vital because it means that you can get to the distance that you want to be fishing a lot more comfortably. Today I've waded out around 20 metres and I've set my platform up with my box on top, and it basically means that my 50 metre distance which I'm fishing today is a lot easier to cast to, because if I was fishing on the bank I'd have to be fishing around 70 metres, which makes everything a lot more difficult. So a platform is a must. It's getting pretty rough now. Wind has seriously picked up and I can tell there's a storm coming. I've looked at the weather forecast, there is a bit of rain forecasting next couple of hours. It's going to be rough and ready fishing. Wind direction plays a massive part in deciding where I choose to fish. The fish follow that wind, all the natural food is pushed where the wind is going. If I were in a corner where it's flat calm, the wind off my back, it might be really nice and comfy to fish, but it's making it 10 times harder for myself. Really sharp jag then. That didn't look like a big fish. If I'm honest, that looked like a small fish indication. Really sharp jag. Them big fish that live in here, the bream, hybrids, apparently there's 10 up to 10 pound as well, so it'd be cool if we get one of them on. But they give you slow pulls. That were a really sharp, jaggy bite. That looked like a perch to me. It's not a great sign, but see how we get on. When you're getting a lot of line as indications, it's a really good thing in my opinion, because it shows you that you're feeding the right bait and you're fishing in the right spot. It's just fine tuning those tiny little things to get in one to eat your hook bait. Another little tap there. That's why it's so important to keep your eye focused on the end of that quiver tip. You might miss all these little sharp jags and indications, but it gives you an idea about what, and again, there, little tiny tap, gives you an idea about what's going on. When you're fishing these sort of venues, the weather conditions can change in a matter of seconds. It can be blowing an ooly 1 minute and then the next it's flat calm. And that's where the exchange system's really handy. I can swap the weights on my feeder in a matter of seconds to make sure I'm nice and accurate every single cast. Perfect cast. It's bang on the money, that cast. I'm really happy with it, and it's a really important thing to mention. You need to make sure every cast counts. When you're only fishing for say a handful of fish, which I might be today, you need to make sure that feeder goes in the exact same spot that you've put all that bait. So if it goes a little bit right, a little bit left, or if you don't quite hit your clip properly, just reel in and make sure every cast is on the money. One item that I couldn't fish without anymore, plays a massive part in my own personal fishing, is a stopwatch. It's funny because there's a bit of a pattern emerging already. At around 4 minutes I'm getting an odd indication. This is my third chuck, and at 4 minutes I've had a liner or a little tap exactly around that time. That's where the importance of having a stopwatch on your side tray. It's really important. I use it quite a lot of things. One, to count how long my feeder's been out there, but two, if I get bites at regular times, I can monitor it on my stopwatch. And if I know if I've had 10 fish and all the bites are coming at around 4 minutes, I don't want to be leaving it there for 15-20 minutes because I'm wasting time. So if all my bite times are coming at around 4 minutes, I'll only leave my feeder out there for say 6, because I'm optimising the amount of time that my feeder's in the water. It's a really important little piece of my arsenal whenever I'm feeder fishing on venues like this. Handy little tool. When you're using multiple rods, it's really important that each one is fishing in the exact same position. Today I've got 3 with me, so I want to be confident that each one is clipped up perfectly in that same position, because you're building that swim up. And to do this properly, I use measuring sticks. This process is really easy. I use the rod that I've plumbed up with, and this is my guide to the other 2 rods. So I put my feeder on the first peg of the measuring sticks I'm using, and the ones I am using today are 2 meters apart. So I simply count how many wraps around the measuring sticks that rod is clipped up to, and simply repeat the process for the other 2 rods. It just gives me a lot of confidence that if I pick up one rod, it's going to be fishing in the exact same place. Number 1, big fish, open water bait, and that's red worms. I'm using 3 red worms, tipped with a red maggot, and that just stop them worms going over the point of the hook, because that'll definitely result in either a missed bite or a lost fish. So I'm just going to tip it with a red maggot. See them worms wriggling like mad there. I don't think the big fish in here can resist it, hopefully anyway. Just whack her out there. Casting these sort of distances which we're fishing today might look easy on camera, but I've been doing this style of fishing for a lot of years now, and there's a few things that I've learned which are really important. You've got to whack the feeder out, and what I mean by that is you've got to use your left hand and really whack it into yourself. That creates the power. You're almost guiding it with your right and really push it into your chest. Another thing is let the feeder drop behind your head. So if you are struggling to hit your clip, just let that feeder drop back a little bit more and it'll be a lot easier to get the distances really accurately. Another thing is don't be afraid of standing up. That gets that little bit of height and almost gives you a little bit more leverage and to whack the feeder out there nice and accurately. If you focus on trying to improve those three areas, you'll definitely be able to hit your clip a lot more accurately and further. It's really interesting because I've had an odd little indication every single cast. It could be small fish. I'm hoping the big fish. And hopefully it results into a few bites. Usually it takes around 5 or 6 casts to get into a rhythm and understand what's going on. So don't be too impatient. I'm not worried. It's my third cast. I've been fishing for around 15 minutes. I'm quite happy. I'm leaving my feeder out there now for around 7 minutes, but I feel like I need to make more noise. When these big waves are on the water, it creates so much disturbance in the water, and I feel like I need to make that noise and let them fish know where I am. You might start having a 4 or 5 minute chucks now instead. That's the beauty of that stopwatch. You can just monitor how long you leave your feeder in for, and it's definitely helped me be a bit more consistent with my catch rates. I'm going to get her in. Patience is key with this style of fishing. You're not going to get a bite every single time you cast it out, but when they do eventually rock up, it'll be worth the wait. The feeder rest you use when you're doing this style of fishing and when it's towing like this is really important, because I don't like to have a really tight tip to my feeder. There's a couple of reasons why I don't think that's right. One, I can't read liners and indications that well, so I don't know what's going on in my peg when my tip is tight like this. And two, when the fish picks up my hook bait, I think they feel that tension and spit it out. I always like to use this XL Reaper rest when it's towing like this, or whenever I'm doing any bream fishing really, because I can slacken off my tip by simply dragging it along the rest. And I think that just gives you a better indication what's going on in your peg, and the fish doesn't feel that tension, so you get a proper positive bite. On big lakes like this, there could be absolutely anything in them, and when that tip flies round, you don't really know what you're hooked into. I'm going to say a big perch, you know. It's kiting really far to me right now. Could be an hybrid. They do kite and move around a lot, but then big bream just wallow in. Quite a lot of weed on my tip as well. I'm a bit worried about that, but let's worry about getting this fishing. Oh, it's a big perch. That's about a pound, that one. Nice fish. Not the fish we're after, but a lovely little start. Nice perch around a pound. Don't get me wrong, a double figure bream would have been a lot nicer way to start a session, but I'm very confident, my rig's working, my bait's right. Just need to swap this little beauty for a bream. It's always quite a nervy feeling waiting for your first fish. And I'm not going to lie to you, I did have the nerves. I wasn't sure with this wind that my rig was fishing properly, my hook bait was being presented properly on the bottom, but that perch just gives me that little bit of confidence that everything's fishing right. Yeah. Yes. Ooh. Little tip here. There's a lot of weed close in. So just stand up and get that little bit of extra height on your rod, and it'll hopefully keep that fish up in the water and away from any weed, because these big fish can easily find that weed and just lock you up and you'll lose it. What is it? It's a big hybrid. Take your time now, don't rush. Yes! Oh, brilliant! I am pumping. Don't get me wrong, I was super nervous. Oh, what a fish! Honestly, I'm really happy. An absolute cracker on a stunning big open water. That's what it's all about for me. I love catching these big wild fish. What a beauty. Changing how long I leave my feeder in the peg has definitely resulted in that hybrid. I was leaving it out for say 7 or 8 minutes, change it down to 4, it's definitely resulted in that bite. So all them little changes and tweaks, that's what it's all about on these big open venues, because you need to think one step ahead. I love wading out on these big open water venues with all my tackle and getting nice and comfy. But just like today, a lot of the time the weather conditions can be horrendous. So to be nice and comfy and be really effective when you're fishing, you've got to have the right setup. Rod choice, reel choice, tip choice and line are the exact same on both of my fishing rods. I've gone for the 13-foot Aventus distance feeder rod. This is perfect for whacking my feeder out there and gives me enough height when I'm playing fish, because there's lots of snags on the bottom on these sort of venues, so I don't want to be using an 11 or 12-foot rod. This 13-footer is perfect. I've got a 2.5 ounce Aventus distant tip in there. That's great because it doesn't bend too much, because there's quite a lot of tow today, but it still gives me enough sensitivity to see liners and indications. Reel choice, I've got a 4000 Aventus reel on there, and it's got 012 pulsate braid. It's quite thickish braid, but I like that because I want that abrasion resistance when I'm reeling it in all the time, and I want that power. And that's matched to a 10-pound Shield shock leader. That's going to be perfect for whacking them feeders out there and playing fish. Lengthwise for this shock leader, I've got one full length of the rod and back down to my reel. So I've probably got 3 or 4 turns on my reel when I'm in the casting position. It's absolutely perfect. Rig-wise, on this particular rod, I've chosen a helicopter rig, and this is the setup that I expect to catch most of the fish on throughout the day. You just don't get in any tangles with this rig. I've got so much confidence in it. Every single time you chuck out, I know I'm fishing perfectly. It's not a complicated rig whatsoever. I've got a 6-inch twizzle boom, and the components of the rig are really simple. To kick off this setup, I've slid a super tight line stop that's a small one, up the line, followed by a medium heli swivel, followed by another small super tight line stop. Then all I've simply done is I've slipped a link swivel onto the line and twizzled that line until I get to a 6-inch length. That 6-inch length is quite important because I think you get a lot more positive bites and you can read everything that's going on a lot better when you've got a bigger drop between where your heli swivel is attaching to your feeder. That little link swivel there, I can attach any feeder I want really easily, so if I want to swap feeders throughout the day, that's a really handy little tool to have. This part of the rig I think is brilliant for not getting any tangles, and all it is, it's a 30cm piece of 10-pound Shield, the same shock leader material, and what I've done is I've done the exact same setup as I have on the bottom part of the rig. I've just twizzled the first 6 inches of it and then I've simply measured the 30cm length and tied a simple figure of 8 knot, which I attach my hook length to. This bit of thick line just eliminates any tangles whatsoever, and it also gives you a bit of durability with this twizzle boom section at the top. My hook length choice is a ready rig. It's a 10 feeder special matched to 019 N-gauge. Nice and durable, and I want that big hook because these fish are absolutely massive, so I don't want to be using a small hook whatsoever. I just don't get a vibe that there's a load of big fish there, so I'm going to have to work for every single bite. Get an odd little tap and indication, but I feel like I need to do a few more little tweaks to make those big fish count. It's early days yet though, I've only been fishing for about an hour, so already had that hybrid. Massive hybrid. Go on, baby. Wow, that is the biggest hybrid I have ever seen. That is a joke. Fair play to hybrids. They're one of the best fighting fish I've ever caught on natural venues. Every single second that you hook that fish, it's trying its very best to break your tackle. Easily the biggest hybrid I've ever seen, let alone caught. It always amazes me how big the fish are in here. The bream are massive, the hybrids are massive, and it's crazy to think that's got some roach in it. What a stunning fish. Catching these eels is actually really frustrating. It's a good thing that I'm attracting fish into my peg, but they're the wrong fish. I've got to do a few things and make a few little tweaks to how I'm feeding my peg to attract those bigger bream and hybrids which I'm targeting. What I'm going to do next couple of chucks, I'm totally going to cut out maggots, worms. The eels absolutely love maggots and worms. I'm just going to start feeding pellets, bit of corn, and hopefully try and get them bream rocking and rolling. The wind's died down just a little bit and the air temperature feels a little bit warmer. Sometimes these little weather changes can just result in a big fish feeding. I'm really confident. There's a little bit less tow on the water too. I feel like I'm gonna get one. That's a big fish. That feels absolutely massive. Grating on a lot of line. feel like I foul up to fish there. Losing fish is part and parcel of fishing, but it's even more gutting on venues like this because you know you're not going to be fishing for tons of bites. So when you do lose one, even more of a kick in the nuts. Slight change of tactics. I feel like I need to make more noise and be more aggressive. Not with my feed, just with making noise and drawing them fish into where I am, because it's noticeable whenever I put 2 feederfuls out and start fishing with a third, I'm getting a lot more bigger fish indications, bigger liners. So they're obviously coming into that noise. Done it on a few venues like this in the past. Cast out 3 times, but you're actually only fishing with a hook bait on the 3rd cast. They almost come into them first 2 feederful noises, and then you can home them in with your 3rd one. So I've just literally taken my hook length off my little heli swivel. I'm going to pop it back on now, and I'm going to fish on this 3rd cast. It's often the way on these big wild places because it's massive, and you need to give yourself the best chance of getting a fish in an area, because it could be absolutely anywhere. Right on the money, that 3rd cast. Hopefully they've heard them previous 2 casts. That big bang of the feeder going in can often draw them big fish into where I'm fishing. That's a proper fish. Just had a tiny tap on my tip and I thought it could be an indication of a big fish. I've had it so many times where you think your rod's just going to be dragged off the rest every single time, but that was literally a tap and then it stopped. And I decided to just whack into it, and it feels like one of them hybrids, to be honest. It feels heavy, whatever it is. Get that rod nice and high. Tell you what, they've obviously come to, they're stuck on a bit of something there. I'll stand on my box, get a bit higher. Definitely on a bit of a ledge or something, that. Tell you what, going out to follow them. These big venues are absolutely full of snags, and luckily that one's come out of it. I've had to follow him out, so it's a little bit of a Robson Green style of fishing, but it's absolutely massive hybrid, that. Come on. Get in there. Oh, I'm pumping. I thought that were a goner then. Whew. I'm knackered. Look at that, what it was stuck on. Very lucky there. What a stunning fish, just look at that. Well, I don't think I've ever had to work as hard to get a fish out of a swim in my life. That was totally snagged up. We're just going out that sort of 20 metres, got a different angle on the line and resulted in this beauty. Absolute unit. Got to be like 6, maybe even 7 pound. That is massive. It's so wide. What a cracker. Slip her back. Proper bruiser. slight tactical change again. I'm getting quite a few liners and indications from what I think are big fish, big pulls on my tip, but I've not had a bite for a while. So what I'm going to do, I've just cast in 2 feederfuls with not too many particles, mainly ground bait, of this extra small exchange feeder with a 50 gram weight on. That's going to make a lot of noise when it hits the surface of the water. That's going to draw the fish in. But on my 3rd cast, I'm going to fish with a little window feeder, just a little cage window. And the reason why these are so effective is because the fish can't get at the bait in your feeder, they can't get in and around it, and it almost focuses them just on your hook bait. So I think that might just trigger a bite. Now that is a serious liner for big fish. It's only a matter of time before they get their heads down and I get one. Really confident now. That were a proper breamy big fish liner that. Thinking about chucking the hybrid out, you know. When I'm getting lots of liners and indications on this helicopter rig, sometimes fishing a hybrid feeder can just focus the fish down onto where your hook bait is. I've had so many times when I'm sat there on the helicopter rig getting liners and indications, but I chuck that hybrid out and all of a sudden you just get a pull out of the blue. And you might be thinking that's more tailored towards carp and bigger fish, but trust me, when these bream and big fish like hybrids come into your peg, you get liners and indications, and sometimes you really want to focus them to where your hook bait is. And the only way to do that is with a method style feed, and that's why I choose this hybrid. Got a 45 gram large hybrid on there, a long black elasticated X-safe stem, all the rod and components the exact same, and I've got another ready rig on there. It's a size 10 QM1 and bait bayonet because I'm going to be fishing wafters on this rig. I think that'll be a great way of picking off an odd bigger fish. On the thod, big change. That's a decent fish as well. On the hybrid feeder. And I actually felt like I wanted to give my peg a little bit of a rest and stop fishing, but I wanted to still fish, but I feel like that hybrid feeder just give my peg a little bit of time to settle, a little bit of time for the swim to, oh, it's a massive hybrid on a hybrid. But I wanted to almost tee up my next cast, and I've had literally a 10-minute cast on this hybrid feeder. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Wow. And thankfully it's resulted in this beauty. It's definitely worked. Get in! Oh, bite out of the blue, honestly. Took me by surprise. 4 dead maggots on a 10 match special there. Changed tactics. I said I was going to fish a wafter, but I thought maggots might just nick me a bite. I'm just going to hold her up for you. What a cool fish. One on. Another hybrid that, boys. They're such big fish these. Every nod of the fish's head feels so powerful. Just kiting slightly to my right where that snag is, so I'm just a bit cautious, but I can always go wading out again. Keep that rod nice and high, away from any weed or anything like that. Just felt it great on something then. Must be a snag there about 3/4 of the way in. Keep it coming. Big head shakes them. This hybrid's definitely doing the trick at the minute. Whenever you're fishing for big fish like this, just take your time whenever they come to the net. Don't rush any stage, because you'll get an opportunity, it'll just pop up and you'll be able to get them. But don't rush, because this is where most of the fish are lost. So I'm going to take my time. That's why this 4 metre net's so handy, because when they do pop up out there like that, you can literally just pop them in the net like that. That is a big hybrid. That's an absolute birther, that one. Wow. The weather today has been an absolute joke. Been howling wind in my face, chucked it down, been bright sunshine, and now it's absolutely flat calm. But you often get that on these natural waters like this. It's crazy weather at times. Oh, fish! Well, this is definitely going to be the last fish of the day. It's been really tricky to keep bites coming, and I'm standing up all the way through this because there's definitely a snag about halfway in that these fish seem to love. Strange, the hybrid feeder's definitely been the one on this trip, and I thought it'd be the total opposite. I thought the helicopter rig would be the one, but I'm really happy with how this is fishing, because you're not getting any indications from small fish or anything like that, and all of a sudden it pulls round and it's a proper fish. So you learn something every time you go, I guess. It's getting pretty dark now as well, as you can probably tell from the cameras, and it's proper last knockings, but winkled one out thankfully. Big old hybrid again. Whee! Good chuckle. Go on, Bobby! Hey! Get in! Woohoo! Oh! Belting the finish on a fish. What a cracking day. Oh, that's an absolute beast of an hybrid. I said this venue was very tricky nut to crack, but we've had a great day. There's about 9 or 10 hybrids, but I've had to really ring the changes, which you often have to do on these sort of big, massive venues where the fish are very, very crafty. I will never tire of catching fish like that. Some of the best hybrids I've ever caught. As I said, this style of fishing isn't for everyone. We've had so many weather conditions, it's been a proper grueler, but when you're catching fish like that, it's definitely worth it.